All right. So on our last segment, Rory brought up the idea, challenging the commonly held idea that these wars that Israel is engaged in Gaza, the many war on terror conflicts that America has been involved in throughout my entire lifetime, that we have been sold this bill that they are helping fight terrorism, but there's really no evidence of that. There's it hasn't ended terrorism. We've been doing this for 20 years. Terrorism still exists in the places where we're fighting. And Rory made the excellent point, which I like to make all the time, that of fucking course killing people isn't going to stop terrorism. I feel like I have to hit myself in the head over and over again because we learn violence only begets violence from a very young age. Like these are lessons we learn on fucking like Barny. Like this is very basic core human morality. And yet for some reason, when it comes to American wars, we go, oh, the way we solve the problem of terrorism is to go kill innocent people. And it blows my mind that anyone could possibly think that that is the correct answer. I feel like every single justification that Zionists put out for Israel demonstrates that fact perfectly. They go, oh, well, Hamas attacked us. They raped people. They attacked civilians. Of course, we need to be able to enact retribution, or else they will never stop. And it's like, well, think about it from there. Just put that shoe on the other foot. Now you have gone and killed innocent people who had nothing to do with Hamas's attack. Now they are going to feel the same way about you. Even if you get rid of Hamas, you're left with a city of people who fucking hate you, and rightfully so. How do you think it's going to get any better? I think that is like the core fundamental premise that is so frustrating to me, because I feel like people should understand it, but they don't seem to. Rory, I'll throw to you since you kind of brought that up. Why do you think such a clear, moral, obvious principle that we're taught from an early age is just lost on so many American adults?
I think a lot of it is because America does have a lot of deep roots in fascism and fascist thinking, and that's really what it boils down to. It's an argument of might makes right, so to speak. That Israel is the occupying force. Israel has the ability, and because Hamas had the nerve to attack them back after all these years of occupation, they are within their rights to then stomp down on Palestinians. And it's just that same thread of thought, like all these occupations that you see the US do, or that even people that are supporting Russia in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's just that same mentality, that same fascist rhetoric of they try and front like they're isolationist, but deep down they are authoritarian. They side with the authoritarians. They side with Israel outside of all the other reasons, maybe religious or otherwise. They side with Israel because they're the authoritarian regime. And that's what a lot of this boils down to. It's authoritarian mindset supporting authoritarian mindset. You also see, I mean, you see the same thing with like Donald Trump supporting South American dictators too. Like Donald Trump doesn't know about the inner workings of, Venezuela's politics. He doesn't give a shit about that. No, he gives a shit about the colonialist Christian autocrat that tried taking over the government. That's what he likes. And that's what a lot of this boils down to when it comes to American conservatives in the mindset of supporting Israel.
Bring in an old topic from a prior segment about economics and everything, and the different measures that we have. Like GDP is a horrible measure because it doesn't, for example, take into account something like domestic labor. You're like, if you have a stay-at-home wife or something like that, or a stay-at-home person in your house, if the roles are reversed, I want to say gender, don't want to like
A stay-at-home
lock anybody
non-binary
into any
individual.
specific gender role, but like, so, and all of the labor they do at home, washing the dishes, take the kitchen up stuff, all that stuff has a price. Like if you go and hire a housekeeper, they have a price, there's an actual wage to that. But if you don't have a housekeeper, somebody's doing all of that work and it's free, and GDP doesn't measure that. Something that GDP does measure is spending on war stuff. Like war is extremely profitable. All of those dictators doing dictator stuff in South America are extremely profitable for the United States. Israel doing Israel things right now, killing thousands upon thousands of children, that is extremely profitable, for the United States. Something that I used to say that I no longer say, because I used to argue with people when they talk about, oh, well, you guys bombed this place and this place, and I would be like, oh, I was against that war, but those bombs don't have a message on there that says, hey, EK did not approve of this bomb. EK did not want his tax dollars spent in that way. No, they see that as the United States of America bombing those people. So every time I say, yeah, we bombed those places, it doesn't matter, and then rolling it back into now where, like if you actually know, let's stay back in history a little bit. Let's look at Afghanistan, because like what Israel's doing right now is not going to make like Israel a safe place for the Jewish people. I mean, Israel's least safe place on earth for Jewish people, like hands down. And like
statistically, yes.
Yeah, it's not going to make it any better. If you look at Afghanistan, like Afghanistan was horrible for women, like when we went in there back in the early 2000s, and it's still horrible for women right now. We didn't change anything after 20 some years. Back in the 70s, when like the commies were trying to do their thing, they were actually trying to make things a little bit better for women. What did we do? We like armed the
Mujahideen.
And we gave them like a bunch of weapons so they could shoot down Russian helicopters and like drive out all of the lefties, and the Mujahideen got in power, and it's been a shit place for women for the past 50 something years. Like this, like, but we made a lot of money off of that. Like a lot of tax dollars got spent off of that. A lot of war spending happened off of that. Like it's the fascism, but it's also the money. It's also the capitalism, which loves fascism. Like it's all intertwined.
Yeah, just a random side note when you mentioned the Mujahideen. So for those of you listening who aren't familiar with what EK was talking about, back in the Soviet era, the Mujahideen was fighting against the Soviet Union on behalf of the Afghanis. And the United States, being involved in the Cold War with the Soviets, funded the Mujahideen to, try to kick out the filthy commies. And Osama bin Laden got his start in the Mujahideen. And so that came back to bite us in the ass on that one. But the funniest part of this, if you go to find comedy in any of it, is like, I think it's Rambo 2. At the very end of the movie, there's like a little title card that comes up and says, this film is dedicated to the brave freedom fighters of the Mujahideen. And which has not aged well, since the whole
whatever
Osama
do you mean
thing. Yeah, I know, right? And then like they ended up like updating it for the Blu-ray or something, saying dedicated to the brave freedom fighters of Afghanistan. They took out Mujahideen. But as far as what you mentioned, John, at first about how what Israel is doing is obviously creating more anti-Israel. So like there's no way that you could think otherwise. Like, and I saw this video earlier today, and this guy was, I think he was being interviewed on CNN. No, actually, it was by Charles Barkley, who apparently has a hard news show now, which is funny to see. But Charles Barkley was asking him about, hey, the Israeli government is saying that you're doing everything you can to not kill civilians and children especially, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Like you seem to be like killing lots of children. And the Israeli representative said that, well, he spent like 3 minutes saying, you have to understand like the brutality of October 7th. I've been doing this for 40 years and I've never seen anything so awful he just like kept talking about it. And the gist of his entire argument was, listen, we have to kill those children because we have to destroy Hamas. Like that's a price that we are willing to pay. And the obvious interpretation of this is like, you think that's going to create less resentment to the nation of Israel? Like there's no way you believe that. And like John, you mentioned Americans, we know this. Like we saw this for 20 years with the war on terror. And EK, you talked about Afghanistan. when we went into Afghanistan in 2003, and then by the time we left a couple of years ago, the Taliban had more control of Afghanistan. Like we didn't do anything to improve the situation. We spent, ungodly amounts of money, lost, the lives of countless soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan for nothing, to actually lose ground. It's wild. And so if anyone should know this lesson, we should know it. And it's weird seeing like we're backing the same thing Israel's doing. I do, however, want to push back a little on what John said about how violence is never the answer, because sometimes it absolutely is. And I want to make it clear, I am not in any way condoning political violence, but I am just saying that you can actually get a good solution from it. Like, and the best example I can think of, like that everyone will be familiar with, is World War II. So we kicked the shit out of the Nazis in Germany and out of Imperial Japan, Japan especially. Like, I think we all know what happened there. But the solution is that violence can't be the only answer, because after World War II, unlike we learned a lesson from World War I, after World War II, after the violence to put down, the imminent threat, there was strong social programs that actually help build up the communities that we had previously fought against. And now Japan and Germany are amongst our strongest allies. So like sometimes the violence is unavoidable. That's part of human history. But if you just only resort to violence, you'll get what we got, in the war on terror and what Israel's doing right now.
I think a key distinction that needs to be brought up there is the difference between offensive and defensive violence. And especially looking at World War II, well, what caused World War II? It wasn't just like, oh, Hitler, then World War II happened. Hitler happened because World War I happened. And
right.
when Germany lost World War I, the world was like, well, fuck you guys. We are going to utterly destroy you. We are going to take these punitive punishments against your entire country. Their entire economy collapsed. People, the classic image was, people carrying wheelbarrows of cash around because that's how fucking worthless it was, because they entered a period of hyperinflation. And then, of course, what's going to come out of that economic desperation? Fucking fascism, fucking really bad people doing really bad things, because everyone's just like, well, I don't have to carry around wheelbarrows full of cash anymore, and things because of him, so I'm just going to listen to what he says. And like, that's what happens. And so we did learn that lesson after, like, Nazi Germany had an offensive war, so did Imperial Japan, and there was necessary use of violence in defense.
Absolutely.
Totally agree with defensive use of violence. The difference, the key difference, and the distinction that I think a lot of Americans don't understand about this conflict still today, is that they either feel like Hamas is, and Gaza is the pure aggressor, and Israel was just sitting there, or at least they think this is some two-sided conflict where they're just like, oh, well, just everyone be nice to each other, right? And that's just not the case, because you have a tiny city of people who are in dire poverty, like just not a very good place to live, who've been living under a blockade for nearly 2 decades now. And by the way, most of them ain't nearly 2 decades old. Like, it's going to cause violence. Like, even that sort of violence, that isn't direct violence, it's enforced by violence, but it is still economic violence. It is still hurting innocent people in an offensive fashion. That is always going to cause resentment. I think one of the reasons investing in post-war Germany, in post-war Japan was effective is because they lost a war of aggression. like as much as bombing Dresden and nuking Hiroshima and Nagasaki, terrible, awful things, just as bad as what is fucking happening in Gaza, or at least on the same fucking realm. They kind of had no fucking ground to stand on to be resentful of it. Like, yeah, no, we started this fight. We kind of just have to take it. But when you are the one who has had the fight started upon you, and you have your fucking family and friends being murdered, you're never, ever going to be okay with that. It's just, it's impossible that anyone can look at that and expect that they're just going to be okay with it, because you're not okay with it, or else you wouldn't be killing children. It's that simple.
Yeah, it is weird that the Israeli government's solution, there's like, well, we have a problem with a militant group in Gaza that we suspiciously funded money to have an easy target. Let's ignore that part. But the only solution is to just bomb the shit out of this, tiny stretch of land. I mean, what else do you want us to do? Give full rights and privileges to Palestinians in the land of their birth? What are you, insane? We can't do something like that. The obvious answer is to slaughter as many children as possible. It's like, how are people like actually thinking like this is a cognizant idea by a human being? Blows my mind, because that's literally what they're saying.
Yeah, they put out a report, I think it was like a couple of days ago, where they said they claimed that they've killed like one Hamas person for like every 2 civilians or some ridiculous shit like that. And it's like, one, it's completely bogus because somebody did the breakdown of it. And if you look at it, the only way you could possibly get that figure is if they counted every male as a member of Hamas.
Oh my God.
No, the number's even like 95%.
Yeah.
1 out of 20 is more the number that it actually is.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, like, why would you shoot for that? It's like, all right, guys, we're gonna go to war with these people. Like, a bunch of citizens, a bunch of civilians are gonna get killed, but for every 2 of those, like, that's a bullshit ratio. Nobody does that. It's like you're supposed to try to have 0 civilian casualties. It's so
dark. It's indefensible. It's just.
I keep hearing people go, well, it's war. People die in war. It's like, no, people don't just die. It's not a natural disaster. It's not a hurricane. War is a human choice. Like every decision made is a choice.
People say that it's like, well, civilian casualties are a fact of war. Yeah, that's true. How about not doing the war? Like that's a simple solution. It's like, it's why it's waning in popularity, because none of it makes any sense. Like, people have been just like stuck in this frame of mind for decades now, and the more we learn about it, the worse it looks, and it can't come quickly enough when public opinion completely turns against this.
I think one of the most accurate things that have been said in this conversation was when Rory talked about Trump, and he talked about might being right, and how Trump looks at Venezuela, whatever the leadership is. I think Putin would be the example that the average American probably recognized more. And he was it seemed like Trump had a fucking crush on Putin, and it's because ideologically they both follow that might equals right mentality. And in America, that is the philosophy of the United States of America for the lives of everyone currently living in it. It's just in America, we don't treat things like equal. We don't let you put military bases anywhere in the Western fucking hemisphere. We put military bases all around the world, but if a single country were to put a military base in the Western hemisphere, America goes, no, you can't do that. And they go, well, why? That doesn't make any sense. And America goes, we have more nukes than you. Shut the fuck up. And that's what happens. And it kind of is true. And I think that's just so absolutely accurate. And I love that you brought up the Trump topic, Rory, because our next episode is going to be about how Trump has been asked verbatim by Sean fucking Hannity, giving him a curveball. Will you abuse your presidential power? And Trump refuses to say no, because the fundamental core philosophy of Donald Trump and people who are supporting Israel right now, fundamentally, is that might equals right. Because if you looked at it on both sides of the coin, they would never think that the Palestinians would have a right to bomb Tel Aviv because the IDF headquarters is there. That would be absurd, but that can't happen, so they don't have to worry about it. And they don't have to worry about it because might equals right. And I think that was fucking awesome, Rory. If you guys are interested in more of this conversation on how Trump is a power-hungry fascist, and we will be talking about that on the next episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button to know when it comes out. Thank you guys for watching, and this has been The Left Wing.